Mauthausen concentration camp was one of the most notorious and brutal sites during World War II, located in Austria. Established in 1938, it was part of the Nazi system designed to exploit forced labor and exterminate those who were considered undesirable by the regime. The camp housed a diverse group of prisoners, but Soviet POWs faced particularly harsh treatment. These prisoners were often subjected to grueling labor, insufficient food, and cruel punishments. By early 1945, the camp was home to around 85,000 prisoners, many of whom were Soviet officers captured during the war. Among these, Block 20 stood as the epitome of Nazi cruelty, known as the Death Block. Here, the prisoners were deliberately starved, beaten, and isolated. The SS enforced a policy of systematic extermination by causing slow and painful deaths through deprivation and physical abuse. The Soviet officers, who had once been disciplined military leaders, were reduced to mere shells of their former selves. Despite these brutal conditions, they maintained their will to survive. The decision to attempt an escape came out of sheer desperation. The prisoners realized that remaining in the block would only lead to their death, so they began to plan a daring breakout. Their strategy involved using whatever materials they could find to disable the camp's defenses and overcome the SS guards. The significance of this moment was not just the escape attempt, but the resilience it represented against the Nazi regime's relentless dehumanization of its prisoners. The stage was set for a daring and dangerous plan that would unfold in the following days. The conditions at Mauthausen concentration camp were some of the harshest experienced by any group of prisoners during World War II. Mauthausen, primarily a labor camp, became a symbol of Nazi brutality, with its expansive complex of subcamps. Soviet POWs, in particular, suffered unimaginable horrors at the hands of the Nazis. These men, most of whom had been soldiers in the Red Army, were subjected to extreme physical abuse, starvation, and psychological torment. Block 20, in which the Soviet officers were confined, stands as a harrowing example of the Nazis' deliberate cruelty. This area was known as the Death Block and was designed to break the prisoners physically and mentally. The block was isolated, surrounded by a low wall topped with electrified wire, with guard towers manned by armed SS soldiers. Inside, the living conditions were abysmal. The prisoners received a fraction of the already minimal rations given to other parts of the camp, often having to eat from wash basins instead of utensils. The block was unheated, and in winter, the SS would hose down the floors, creating a freezing, slippery environment. There were no beds, and the lack of basic amenities turned each day into a struggle for survival. The psychological impact on the prisoners was immense. The constant torture, hunger, and lack of rest wore down the men, yet their military training helped them maintain a degree of discipline. They had been trained to endure hardship, but even they reached their breaking point. The mind-numbing monotony of suffering, combined with the looming threat of execution, left the prisoners in a state of despair. As their numbers dwindled from 4,300 officers in April 1944 to just 800 by January 1945, the POWs knew they had to act. They understood that if they didn't escape, they would face certain death, either by starvation, torture, or execution. The inhumane conditions and oppressive atmosphere of Block 20 pushed the Soviet officers to the edge, leading them to take a final stand. Their survival instinct, coupled with the discipline and resilience ingrained in them during their time in the Red Army, gave them the determination to escape. They knew their chances of success were slim, but the alternative was far worse. The SS had created an environment of fear and hopelessness, but the prisoners' ability to work together and plan in the face of death gave them the strength to try the impossible. This brutal reality led to the development of a desperate plan to escape. The prisoners realized that their survival depended on overcoming the oppressive conditions of Block 20. The breakout was not just an act of physical resistance, but also a rebellion against the mental and emotional devastation they had endured. They used whatever tools they could find, improvising weapons and strategies to take on the Nazi guards. Their ingenuity, bravery, and unwavering commitment to survival were their last hopes for freedom. As we explore their plan and the events that followed, it becomes clear that their courage and resourcefulness were their last hopes for survival. The Breakout plan at Mauthausen was a remarkable display of resourcefulness, courage, and military discipline, despite the prisoners' extremely weakened condition. After enduring months of unspeakable torment in Block 20, the Soviet POWs realized that their only chance of survival was to escape. Their plan, which had been carefully crafted in the face of overwhelming adversity, utilized their military training and ingenuity to overcome the brutal conditions of the camp. At the heart of the escape was the strategic use of the POWs accommodation. The POWs brutalized prisoners who were forced to work for the SS and oversee their fellow inmates, live in a central area within Block 20. Their quarters provided the only access to necessary materials for the escape. The prisoners knew that if they could eliminate the POWs and take control of their accommodation, they could gain access to critical resources. The POWs' furnishings and tools would play a pivotal role in the escape, as they were able to break up the furniture and use it to create makeshift weapons. The first step of the plan was the elimination of the POWs. At midnight on February 3rd, 1945, the prisoners quietly infiltrated the POWs' quarters, catching them off guard. The chief capo, an Austrian man, was quickly killed, his throat slit by the prisoners. 7 other POWs were also killed by strangulation. With the POWs out of the way, the prisoners had the freedom to use their belongings to craft weapons, such as makeshift clubs, knives, and even rudimentary explosives. Next, the prisoners needed to disable the electric fence that surrounded the camp. The electrified fence was a significant barrier between them and freedom, as it would kill anyone who touched it. The plan was simple, but extremely dangerous. They would use blankets soaked in water to short-circuit the fence. They also planned to use fire extinguishers to disable the guard towers and neutralize the machine guns that were stationed to mow down anyone attempting to escape. The prisoners carefully worked out their strategy. At the same time, they knew that the assault on the guard towers would be the most perilous aspect of their plan. The watchtowers were heavily armed with SS soldiers, equipped with machine guns. In order to avoid being seen by the guards, the prisoners planned to confuse the sentries by simulating a morning roll call. A single officer, dressed in the chief capo's uniform, would lead the prisoners out into the yard, shouting commands like the POWs would do. This would cause confusion for a few critical moments, giving the prisoners the opportunity to move quickly towards the towers. The prisoners' discipline and military experience were key in executing the plan. They had been trained to endure hardship, and this training paid off during the escape attempt. Despite being emaciated and malnourished, they maintained their military training, which allowed them to carry out such a coordinated attack. Their actions were not just driven by a desire for survival, but by the deep sense of unity and resistance to the Nazi regime that had tortured them for so long. As the prisoners assaulted the guard towers, they managed to disarm and disable the machine guns, taking control of the towers. Once the sentries were neutralized, they quickly moved to climb the walls of Block 20, a perilous task considering the high voltage of the electric fence and the looming threat of gunfire from other guard towers. Their plan worked, and a number of prisoners made it through the wall and into the surrounding areas. However, the odds were still stacked against them as they faced harsh weather, enemy pursuit, and treacherous terrain. This daring escape, though ultimately unsuccessful for many, demonstrated the unbreakable spirit of the Soviet POWs. Even in the face of unimaginable suffering, they managed to channel their military discipline and creativity into a final act of defiance. Their resourcefulness in crafting weapons, overcoming physical barriers, and organizing a rebellion against their captors was a testament to their will to live and their rejection of the Nazi brutality they had endured. The chaos in the camp reached a boiling point as the Soviet prisoners of war, POWs, initiated their desperate escape. The prison yard, once a place of silent torment, became a battlefield as the prisoners charged towards the walls, armed with makeshift weapons, furniture, and stolen fire extinguishers. Their plan, daring and fraught with danger, was set into motion with unwavering resolve. The first wave of prisoners, carrying broken furniture, raced toward the electric fence that encircled the block. The sight of the electrified wires towering over them did little to dampen their resolve, even as the thought of a brutal death loomed over every step they took. The SS guards, surprised by the sudden uprising, scrambled to react. They quickly grabbed their weapons and manned the machine gun stations. But the prisoners had anticipated this. As they stormed the yard, they threw objects with incredible force, hitting the guard towers with a barrage of coal lumps, wooden shoes, and lumps of soap. The chaos was immediate. The guards in the towers struggled to get clear shots as they were bombarded, and within moments, the prisoners had gained a crucial advantage. The constant bombardment overwhelmed the machine gun nests, allowing the POWs to move closer to the wall. With a carefully coordinated effort, the prisoners used the stolen furniture to build a makeshift ramp against the electric fence. The blankets soaked in water were thrown over the fence, short-circuiting the deadly voltage. As the lights of the camp flickered and the electric fence plunged into darkness, the prisoners' path to freedom became a blur of determined faces and furious action. But the obstacles were far from over. In the distance, the SS began mobilizing their response, scrambling to deploy more forces and engage the escapees before they could breach the outer walls. Amid the pandemonium, small teams of prisoners, armed with fire extinguishers, scaled the guard towers. Their mission was clear: to disable the sentries and seize the machine guns. The prisoners, relying on their military training, acted with discipline and precision. At one tower, a three-man team managed a surprise guard. With swift precision, they blinded him with a fire extinguisher, knocking him unconscious before securing his machine gun. Their success sparked further action as more prisoners rushed to follow suit. The machine guns, once pointed at the escaping prisoners, were now turned on the remaining guards. As the prisoners pushed forward, breaking through the wall of Block 20 and charging across the open ground towards the main perimeter, the SS were forced into frantic action. The guards in the towers fired sporadically, but their shots were ineffective in the face of the prisoners' swift movements. The prisoners' resistance was marked by a final burst of energy as they charged through the barracks and across the perimeter fence, but the camp was far from defenseless. The pursuit was relentless. As soon as the escapees breached the perimeter, they faced a new challenge: the SS and local militias. Local Austrians, many of whom were part of the armed militia, took to the streets, hunting down any escaping POWs. The atmosphere in the town was tense, as the sound of gunfire echoed through the village. Some villagers, motivated by fear, hunted the escapees down mercilessly. However, a small few risked their lives to help the POWs, showing humanity amidst the chaos and bloodshed. These rare acts of kindness were overshadowed by the sheer violence of the hunt. As the prisoners scattered into the nearby woods, hoping for cover, the SS, along with local militias, pursued them relentlessly. One group of escapees, led by Colonel Grigory Zavalotnyak, fought their way through a Luftwaffe anti-aircraft battery. Seizing the guns and a truck, they sped off, but their luck ran out when they were ambushed and killed by pursuing motorized infantry. The escape, while marked by moments of success, was overshadowed by the violence that followed. The escapees' brief taste of freedom was quickly extinguished by the overwhelming pursuit of the SS and local militias. Yet, even in the face of relentless pursuit, the prisoners' actions remain a testament to their unbreakable resolve and courage in the face of insurmountable odds. Their escape, while ultimately thwarted, sent a message that even in the most brutal of circumstances, resistance is possible. The Mauthausen concentration camp, located near the town of Mauthausen in Upper Austria, was one of the most notorious Nazi concentration camps during World War II. Established in August 1938, shortly after Austria's annexation by Nazi Germany, it was strategically situated near the Wiener Graben granite quarry. Prisoners were subjected to forced labor, including carrying heavy stone blocks up the infamous stairs of death, leading to exceptionally high mortality rates. By the end of the war, the Mauthausen camp system comprised the main camp and approximately 100 subcamps spread across Austria and southern Germany. The total number of prisoners incarcerated was around 190,000, with at least 90,000 perishing due to the brutal conditions. The camp was liberated by the United States Army on May 5, 1945. In the days leading up to the liberation, the remaining SS guards abandoned the camp, leaving behind approximately 40,000 prisoners. The first American troops arrived on May 5th, securing the camp and its subcamps. Today, the Mauthausen Memorial stands as a solemn reminder of the atrocities committed during the Holocaust. Visitors can explore preserved historic sites, including the quarry, the stairs of death, the SS quarters, the camp prison, and the gas chamber. The memorial also houses a museum with changing exhibitions and a room of names to honor the victims. For those interested in visiting, the Mauthausen Memorial offers guided tours and educational programs to ensure the lessons of history are not forgotten. The aftermath of the escape from Mauthausen was a grim and violent chapter. As soon as the breakout occurred, the SS, along with local civilians, began a relentless pursuit of the escapees. The Nazi forces and their collaborators were determined to prevent any escapee from reaching freedom, and the local Austrian population was quickly mobilized to assist in the hunt. Local civilians played a significant role in tracking down the prisoners, driven by fear, the promise of rewards, and a sense of duty to the Nazi regime. This collaboration between the SS and the civilian population raised profound moral dilemmas, as many Austrians were torn between their loyalty to the Nazis and their own ethical compass. Some ordinary citizens actively participated in the manhunt, while others, despite the intense pressure, quietly resisted, refusing to join the cruel hunt. The Soviet prisoners of war, despite their ingenuity and courage, faced immense challenges. Many of them were recaptured and executed upon their return to the camp. A few managed to escape temporarily, only to be hunted down by the pursuing forces. The SS, along with local militia groups, intensified their efforts, ensuring that the fugitives faced near certain death. The desperation and fear of the prisoners, as they fled through the countryside, were palpable, and their attempts to reach safety were often thwarted by the overwhelming firepower and the unforgiving terrain. The fate of the escapees, however, did not end with their capture. The moral cost of the hunt and the eventual execution of many was a topic that lingered long after the war. The legacy of the Mauthausen breakout and the role of the Austrian civilians in the aftermath of the escape is still a subject of discussion and reflection in Austria today. Many of the civilians who were involved in the pursuit faced post-war repercussions, while others lived with the guilt of their actions during the war. The complex web of collaboration, resistance, and moral failure serves as a dark reminder of the moral compromises made during one of the darkest periods of human history. The legacy of the Mauthausen breakout remains one of the most powerful and poignant examples of wartime resistance. This daring escape not only highlighted the immense courage and resourcefulness of the Soviet prisoners of war, POWs, but also raised significant ethical questions about the actions of those involved, both the escapees and the local civilians. The dramatic breakout in early 1945 remains etched in history as a symbol of defiance against Nazi oppression. It serves as a stark reminder of the lengths to which individuals will go to resist tyranny and the moral dilemmas that can arise during such resistance. The breakout itself was not only a desperate attempt for survival, but also a powerful act of resistance against a regime that dehumanized and brutalized its captives. It raised profound questions about the ethics of rebellion, especially when faced with such overwhelming odds. The escapees, many of whom were seasoned soldiers, chose to risk everything in the hopes of a fleeting chance at freedom, knowing the potential costs of their actions. This act of defiance encapsulated the broader theme of wartime resistance, with a line between survival and morality often blurred. The ethical issues surrounding the breakout were not limited to the actions of the prisoners. They extended to the civilians who were forced to choose between collaborating with the Nazis or assisting the escapees. The brutality of the German forces, aided by local militias, demonstrated the extent of Nazi influence and control, which left many Austrians with difficult moral decisions. Some civilians, under the duress of threats, took part in hunting down the escapees, while others risked their lives to help them, marking a rare but significant act of humanity in a time of widespread fear and suffering. The Breakout's historical significance extends far beyond the immediate aftermath. It exemplified the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable cruelty. For future generations, the legacy of the Mauthausen escape serves as a powerful reminder of the enduring importance of resistance movements in the fight against oppression. It provides valuable lessons on the ethics of rebellion and the responsibilities of individuals during times of war. The escape also serves as a crucial reference point in the ongoing discussion of war crimes, as it underscores the extreme actions individuals are forced to take when confronted with totalitarian regimes. Today, the Mauthausen Memorial stands as a testament to the events of that fateful escape, preserving the memory of those who fought for their freedom and ensuring that the moral questions it raised continue to resonate. This chapter in history highlights the importance of remembering the past, reflecting on the ethical implications of wartime actions, and understanding the broader consequences of resistance movements in shaping the course of human history. The Breakout at Mauthausen remains a powerful symbol of both the horrors of war and the indomitable will to resist injustice, continuing to inspire dialogue on war crimes and the moral complexities of wartime decisions.